Hello, everybody. My name is Steve, and I'm here today with two special guests. Epic, you want to introduce yourself and tell us about your channel?
Nah, the people already know who I am, man. It's EpicTalez. You already know what it is. Check out my channel, like, comment, and subscribe. I'm so excited today because we're talking to Mike Shel. Like, you know what? Let Mike introduce himself.
I'm Mike Shel,
Writer of Viral Lands. Guys, if you have the same kind of taste with me, or you like horror, grim, dark, you like those dark tones, right? That constantly keeps your mind on edge. Viral Lands is what you should read. It's only an hour, and it's like the setup for the Aching God series. Guys, I read Viral Lands. I was planning to read like Aching God like sometime in say like September, maybe October. I read Barrowlands and I was like, I just destroyed my TBR. I was just like, every other book can wait. This one has to be read right now. So, yeah.
So Mike was gracious enough to come by and chat with us, and what we wanted to do, we're starting the trilogy next month. So in September, we'll be reading Aching God. At the end of the month, we'll have an online meetup to discuss it, and then the following, we're going to do that each month for each book. So we wanted to get a little preview of the trilogy and get an idea of some inspirations and how the trilogy came to be. So thanks again, Mike, for stopping by and chatting with us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So where did the idea for this trilogy come from?
I was writing for Paizo Publishing from 2010 to 2017. I was doing modules, gazetteers for those who aren't aware, Pathfinder is a pretty big fantasy role-playing tabletop game. And I was writing adventure material for them. And I had an idea for a standalone module, and I pitched it to James Jacobs, the creative director at Paizo, at a Gen Con, and he passed on it. And the story just really kept nagging at me. And so the next Gen Con, I pitched it to him again, and his response was, you know what, I think this is something that you need to write. And so I actually kind of really appreciate that he turned me down, because what I ended up doing, because I had conceived of it originally in the Pathfinder world of Galarian and plugging it in there. By taking it, making it all my own, I created my own world to set it in, and that gave me a lot more freedom to kind of just run wild with ideas. So Aching God itself was the first book, and it was based on the idea for a module that I had. And when I was about a third of the way through writing it, I realized that this could very easily be expanded into a trilogy, and I could see where it was going. And so probably before I finished Aching God, I realized I was writing a trilogy. But it just started off as this is an idea for a one-off 64-page module. So.
Wow. So after he passed on it and you realized you have a lot more freedom, did your writing process change after that? Did you start to think of things differently, not only of the world, but story?
I think I had mentioned before we came on that I'd wanted to write for years. And I had made the effort to write novels in the past, but got bogged down after 20, 30 pages. I would just I would edit and re-edit and re-edit, and just until I had squeezed every ounce of joy and inspiration out of it and abandon it. And that just happened over and over and over again until I kind of, I'm not constitutionally suited to do this kind of writing. I'd always attend the writer's seminar at Gen Con every year, and mostly from thinking, well, I'm writing for RPGs, so anything that I can do to kind of beef up my narrative skills will be good. So I go to it for that reason. And I was at a seminar, and one of the authors, I wish I could remember who was on this panel who said this, because it was a miraculous thing for me. He just talked about his writing process, which was sitting down and taking whatever chunk he wrote the day before. If he wrote 2,500 words the day before, he'd take that 2,500 word chunk and he'd do one quick editorial pass, and he'd pick up from there and start writing again. And I thought, okay, I'll give this a try and see if it'll work with this idea I had, which at the time was called "In the Belly of the Aching God." And I cranked out the first draft of this novel, 132,000 words in 10 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, but I mean, this is someone who'd never been able to get past 30 pages, and I was just flabbergasted. It came out, felt like it was magic.
Wow. So the book basically kind of wrote itself.
Yeah, it felt like someone else was writing it. It just was I was just kind of the stenographer. Is it okay if we curse? And
yeah, go for it.
Go for it, man.
I had always assumed when you hear authors talking about characters writing themselves and kind of their voice kind of takes over, I always thought, oh, that is just kind of affectation bullshit, and that's not really that doesn't happen. I'm damned if that didn't happen to me in a lot of situations where, for instance, one of the characters who was a one-off in the first book is a point of view character in the third book. I thought she wasn't that she was just there to kind of make a point in one chapter, and all of a sudden she took on this role that I hadn't originally conceived. So anyway, my process changed enormously when I had that writing tip. So wrote the first draft in 10 weeks and then spent the next year and a half or so doing rewrites and revisions and editing and such.
Wow.
So,
that's like that reminds me of like when I was a kid, and then like I'll wake up in the morning, first thing in the morning, I'll go to my laptop and I'll start writing. I'll forget to eat, drink water, I'll forget to do anything, and I'll just write all day. And then my mom will come to my room, I'll be dehydrated, my lips will be chapped, and then she would ask me if I've eaten, and I'll be thinking about it, And at the time, it didn't even occur to me that I wanted to be a writer. So how I found out about Aching God was that I have this friend on Booktube, Andrew, one of my first friends in the Booktube community, and I had him like proofread each chapter of my book, because at the time I was releasing a chapter a day, and he was just like, I kind of think I get what you want to do. You need to read Barrowlands. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, Barrowlands is the prequel to Aching God. And I kept putting it away. I kept putting it away. I kept putting it away. And then I was going on a trip to Victoria with my girlfriend last week. And like I was like, oh, it's a 1 hour on Audible. Let me just listen to it. And when I was listening to it, the whole time I was shaking. Like the tone is consistent, and the tone is there's this constant sense of mystery. The book is super, super short. It's so small, but I am hooked. Like I'm hooked. I'm very curious about the protagonist. I think that was the protagonist, right?
Which who the unnamed
the silent one, yeah. Okay, so I'm very curious about, like, I want to dig into this character. That's one. And two, the world. Like, what the hell is going on there?
Cool.
Yeah.
I actually wrote Barrowlands after Aching God. And I had conceived of it originally as something, okay, this is a teaser to get people to sign up for my newsletter. I'll offer this story. And then the opportunity came along to put it into an anthology with a bunch of other indie fantasy writers. And it's now it's in a collection of short stories that's ebook called Lost Lore. And that's probably where you I don't know, you didn't read it, you listened to it.
Yeah.
Because Audible, or rather Podium Publishing, who I contracted with to do the audiobooks, asked if I had anything to go along with it, any short stories, and they recorded. They had Simon Vance, who's the narrator for the trilogy, do that as well, and release that as a teaser as well to get people hooked in. But I wrote Barrowlands as kind of an afterword to give people a picture of what happened to the main character before the events of Aching God. So it takes place about 3 years before Aching God happens.
So I have a friend, he's a creative writing professor, right? And he's always telling me how oh, like he feels like he's always like he's like my mentor, you know, he's helping me like improve my writing. And he said something, you need to know what to leave out and you need to know what to leave in. Like you can't just like constantly like do expositions of what is going on inside a character's head. And I always kind of understood what he meant. And he always referred me to read Ernest Hemingway, like because I mean Hemingway, like there's a way he writes things very objectively. And like I read Hemingway and I got the idea of what he was talking about. But when I read, and I know we're talking about Aching God, but like my context to like the whole world is what I experienced when I was consuming Barrowland. So when I read Barrowland, I got exactly what he was saying. I like it, like the picture became so clear. So I don't know if it's a conscious thing for you or if it's an unconscious thing, but how do you know what to leave out in your writing, and how do you know what to leave in to create such a sense of mystery, not just about the characters, right, but also about the world in general?
That's a really tough question. I don't. There's this temptation, especially if you grew up reading Tolkien, to plan out every single little detail of the world that you're writing in, right? And so there are certain things I know that I'm a plan. I used to be a big planner, and I would spend ages creating a world, and spend this time coming up with well, they don't have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I have to come up with names for the days of the week, names for the months. We have to have different names for the moon and the sun, and you can get really bogged down in all those details and lose the forest for the trees. So I think backing away some and really focusing more on having a rough idea of what your world looks like, or if you've got lots of ideas about the details, keeping that to yourself and throwing it in every now and again as a piece to color the world. To make it three-dimensional, focus more on character. When you focus so much on all the details and the lore and the history, even though I love that stuff, I'm fascinated by that stuff and all of Tolkien's appendices and whatnot. That's fascinating stuff, but you lose sight of what really matters, which is the characters you're talking about and their story and what's happening to them. So focusing more on their emotions, their reactions to things, and just how is this affecting your people, if you have people as your main characters, rather than the world they're in. Because you're not creating a gazetteer, right? A world guide. You're creating, you're telling a story that takes place in a world, and by the very definition, then the world should be the environment they're in, not the story itself. So I'm not sure if that answers
environment. No, that's a good one. The world should be the environment they are in, not the story itself. That's a good one. Like a lot of us nerds, fantasy nerds, like we started with Tolkien, and while I can read Lord of the Rings and enjoy it, and like I've read it so many times, I don't like, if I saw someone trying to write like that, like I would I would critique it so hard, because I don't like it. Like when Tolkien did it, it was fine, and especially at the age I read it and everything. But I don't like the use of adverbs that well, like, and just like certain details that like details that are necessary. It's like you're focusing on the story, and then like some excessive description starts taking your mind in another direction where you're trying to picture something else. But yes, like I really really enjoyed, like I'm really looking forward to reading Aching God, the Iconoclasts trilogy. Now let me ask you a question, because there's sometimes it's always difficult for me, not difficult, but there's a very thin line between I would say dark fantasy, horror, and grimdark. What would you describe your book as?
I would describe it as dark fantasy. And the reason for that, yeah, sometimes it's been called grimdark, and the Grimdark magazine. I got some attention from Grimdark magazine because I think the world itself is pretty grim. But what I think makes it different is that there are characters for you to actually root for. They're genuine good guys, and it's not hopeless, right? Things look pretty bleak, but there's hope, and there's goodness in the world, and there are things worth fighting for. The way I characterize grimdark is, no good deed goes unpunished. You try to do good, and all you do is cause immeasurable suffering. And that can be, that's a nice antidote to just, the very, dichotomous way that a lot of old fantasy was, where you had evil and you had good, and there was no gray in between. And so grimdark in a sense was a reaction to that, and it's great stuff. But I find that I need that can't be all I consume, because I want to jump out of a window eventually. I want to believe in the idea that we can do things to make the world a better place, that our connection to one another matters, that it's important to care about others and the fate of the world. And grimdark just kind of says, in a lot of ways, nothing's ever going to get better. Everything you do is futile. And here are all these anti-heroes for you to get inside their heads. Again, some that it done well, grimdark is amazing stuff. Right? Incredibly rich, really powerful stuff. But then, I know that I need something where there's some light that happens, right? Something that lights the darkness.
Something like I like with like grim dark and dark fantasy and like some specific kind of horror as well, is that the world is very grim, of course, that's the main appeal and everything. But then because it's such a dark world, when there's hope, it shines so bright. Like it's and the thing is that after you've read so many books, and you understand the hero's journey and plot structures and all of that stuff, right? Like a lot of books start becoming predictable, and it's like you're almost just waiting for it to happen. And when it happens, because you were already predicting it, because you've read so many books and you're already predicting it, there's something lost. But those dark, so the value of grimdark and dark fantasy and some kind of horror is that like there's always the possibility of your hope being crushed, right? So you value when it's yielding results in a positive direction. It yields like it's like you're really rooting for it to work. You're actually scared that, okay, your protagonist could actually, like, I don't know, lose a leg, like doing something random. You know what I mean? So like that is the value. That is why one of the things I like about grimdark very a lot. And even I've read quite some grimdark. Like I just discovered like grimdark, like really discovered it last year. I've read a couple before, but when I read Barrowlands, like the tone, like just the setting, and just like the not just the setting, like the pace of events, and when things start getting escalated, like it's the flow of my emotions when I was reading the book, because that's how I know when I like a book. The flow of emotions while I'm reading it, like was just I had no complaints. Like there's nothing, there was not I had no problem with it. So I'm really excited to read the Iconoclasts.
Cool.
I think he liked it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really did. I predict you're gonna like it too, Steve.
Yeah, I hear a lot. Everyone that I usually align with is raves about this series, so I'm really excited to get started on it. Is the so there is a reading order. We were talking a little bit before we came on.
Yeah, perfect.
So, Barrowlands is the first book,
Well,
the prequel. Well, it's the is the short story, right?
yeah, but Epic read Barrowlands first, and that's fine. But ideally, read Aching God and then Barrowlands.
Oh, okay.
Because I think that I'm just really be interested to hear people's experience of Barrowlands being aware of what happened in Aching God. But you could do it either way. And Barrowlands is in that the Lost Lore, which is a free ebook available at Amazon. Then Aching God, after Aching God, then Sin Eater is the second book. And I'd recommend that people read Final Word, which is a short story in another free fantasy anthology called Heroes Wanted, also available at Amazon.
Okay.
And then Idols Fall.
So I have a question. So this world is bigger than the Iconoclast. Like, is it something that is going to continuously expand, or is this something? Are you going, like, are you looking at other projects? Like, what is the plan with this world?
I definitely have more plans for this world. The question is where I go next. I mean, I had thought that I was going in the direction of a second trilogy set 200 years in the future, in the kind of analog of the American colonies before the Revolution. 200
cool.
years after the events of, and so you kind of see what's happened in some sense to the world and what's developed following the events of Idols Fall. But I'm hesitating because I've got other ideas. I've got that trilogy set in the New World. Then I have 3 standalones I'm thinking about. One called Korth the Revelator, which takes place 700 years before Iconoclasts, before the founding of the Empire of Halifax. And Korth is actually the first king, and so it's actually his story of how he ends up coming upon the gods who reveal themselves to him and starts this empire. Another is a book set in Ashkea, which is the Eastern Empire that are the kind of historical enemies of the Empire of Halifax. And then one of the things that I found, a lot of reviewers, people who talk about the book, will talk about how much they love dungeon crawls, right? And it's the book. You're 3/4 of the way through the book before you get to the dungeon crawl. And it's like, yeah, I'm not going to write a 600-page dungeon crawl, dude. Yeah. There's more than just that going on. I thought, well, you know what I could do is write a collection of short stories that were just dungeon crawls, all related to the Syriac League, which is this organization that you'll be introduced to shortly after you start reading Aching God. That is essentially a league of people who go and explore old ruins and hunt out monsters and treasure and whatnot. So those are the 3 standalones. And then I've got another trilogy I'm thinking about, which I'm not going to say where in the world it's happening, but it's on another continent. So yeah, I've got, I think, 9 books rolling around in my head right now, all set in this world at different times. And I'm excited to get at it. It's been tough to find time writing. Since, of course, I've got a day job and a 6-year-old son. So
Oh wow.
yeah,
Sounds
so it's been tough to find writing time lately.
Wow, yeah. Well, so you better find that writing time because like I'm excited and I'm gonna probably gonna read everything. Like I like worlds that are like built like that extensively so that like because it's always good to have a sense because sometimes you read a book and you the way it's written you kind of don't get the sense that something else is happening somewhere else, like you don't like that is not, but like when you're like you already have like so many ideas of like different stories happening in this world, then like the idea of the world itself has just expanded in my head and I'm very curious about it. So this book is self-published, right?
Yes.
Okay. And did you have like when you were started, like to the best of my knowledge, you were part of you submitted this book as in the SPFBO. I think that's Mark Lawrence's thing. And like how in terms of like publicity, like how do you think that helped the book like just like get out there?
The book was already doing reasonably well.
Okay.
I mean, if talking in self-publishing terms, this just opens up a whole can of worms talking about this. Let me think about how I want to answer this.
We don't want to get you in any trouble or anything.
Yeah. I was really lucky to have to meet a few self-published fantasy authors before I published the first book, and got involved in a group of them that we have conversations with one another. We share tips. We offer encouragement. It's an amazing group of people called the Terrible 10. They're neither terrible nor are there 10 of them. I had an in with a major publisher in that at the time, Paizo had a novel line that was being overseen by Tor Books. And because I had written for Paizo, I approached the editor at Tor at Gen Con, it was always at Gen Con every year at the Writer Symposium. I approached him to talk with him about this idea I had since I had already written for Paizo, and he was familiar with my stuff. And he basically said, when you've got a draft you're happy with, send it to me. So here's some guy. Any unpublished writer out there right now would give their left kidney for an opportunity like this, to put something in the hands of one of the major publishers. And he took it, and I sent it to him. And the next Gen Con we met, and he bought me lunch and gave me feedback and told me, first of all, that, he had very good things to say about it, very kind things to say about the quality of the writing. But he said that I want to be honest with you and tell you that a New York publisher will not be interested in this novel.
Wow.
And he told me why. He said, in part, your protagonist is too nice.
Really?
And what it boiled down to is that they really are looking more for the grimdark kind of vibe. At least at this time, this would have been 2017, I believe. I think he said, I think that, you probably would do pretty well publishing this on your own and going the self-publishing route. So, this editor he's a great guy. Gave me this time, took the time, to read my novel, bought me lunch, gave me feedback. Again, any unpublished fantasy author on the planet would ransom their grandmother to have an opportunity like that. So I want to be clear that I have no ill will whatsoever, and I feel really privileged that he took the time to do that. So I went back to the self-publishing book because I was considering doing the self-publishing route because I'm a control freak and I'd like to be able to choose what my cover looks like and what goes in and what stays in, what gets cut and whatnot. And I'm also not someone who deals great with rejection. And so the idea of querying to find an agent and then querying to find a publisher, and the fact that, at the time I was 54 and I thought, I'm too old for this shit. Right? I don't have the ego strength and I don't have the time to try to find someone. And if I want to publish this, I go the route to make this a professional product. I get a professional editor to edit this. I get a professional to design and lay out the book, both the ebook and the print. And I get a professional artist to do the cover. And then I run it through these so that, I think today that that indie publishing is that stellar stuff. It's just amazing stuff out there that's self-published. And, it's not vanity publishing. Now, there are some people who don't get a professional editor who edit themselves or have their buddy edit it for them. People who are doing their own covers that really shouldn't be, that you want a professional looking cover. I think that these days that a lot of times indie fantasy is where it's at. They're taking more experiments. A lot of these, they're looking at now, there's a big push for getting diverse voices, right? And it's like, guys, indie has been doing that already. We have members of the Slack, writers of color, who have been producing amazing stuff told from different cultural perspectives than European, kind of a European vibe. It's been there. It's been happening in indie publishing all this time. And some of those people are getting snarfed up. People like Evan Winter. If you haven't read
Rage of Dragons,
books, Rage of Dragons, and what's the next book? Blanking. Fires of Vengeance. Yeah. Yes. Amazing stuff. Chaos Veloso's Chronicles of the Wolf Queen. It used to be called Bitch Queen. That's what traditional publishing does. It makes you change things like that. But she was self-published and they snarfed her up because she's an amazing writer. She tells amazing stories. But I also look at the opportunities out there for readers of fantasy who want to hear different voices. T.L. Greylock, Phil Tucker, Alec Hudson, Ben Galley, Zach Pike. There are amazing people out there. And Spiffbo, getting back to your question, is a great place for someone on the outside to get a picture of what's available in indie writing. 300 people submit every year. You get semi-finalists from the 10 blogs that are doing the reviews. So you get they each get 30 books that they have to review. They bring those down to a few finalists, semi-finalists, and then each blog selects one finalist. So there are 10 finalists. My book, when Aching God debuted, it did pretty well for an indie book with no advertising budget, right? Just, hey, it's here. And part of that was getting some of my indie friends letting me in on people who might be interested in it and giving them some advanced copies for free in order to get an honest review, and the word of mouth that just happened and people being excited about it. When Spiffbo came along, I was blown away because my book was the first one of the first blog that selected its finalist was the blog that selected my book as their finalist, and so here I am. I'm in the finals of Spiffbo, and I definitely saw a bump up in sales for a while. and a lot more interest, and that was cool. But then, as it turns out that a lot of the other judges didn't feel as keen about it, and it started getting lower ratings, all of a sudden I just watched my sales go boo, and really kind of went down for a while. So Spiffbo was really, and in some ways, kind of a blow to my confidence, where I got, that someone loved it and put it forward, and then it ended up. I mean, it did okay, but it certainly didn't set anything on fire. And people asked, are you going to submit anything else to Spiffbo? And I kind of thought, you know what, I got the attention the first go around, and rather than being something that someone submits to over and over again, I'm going to be one of those guys that said, hey, I had my chance. Let's give other authors a chance. And plus, I don't think I can take the emotional blow if it isn't something that people enjoy. So Spiffbo is a great way for people to discover new indie writers, and I fully support it. And I've had a lot of friends who have been in Spiffbo, and that's how I met a lot of other indie writers. It's a great opportunity, but people also have to recognize that there are always elements of luck. If there are, the year that I got selected for the same blog, another writer, Benedict Patrick, who's just a wonderful writer. His Yarns World is just brilliant stuff. And he was in the same group as I was. And was my book better than his? Some people think so. A lot of people prefer his book. He's a wonderful writer. I'd probably have chosen his book. And there's just that getting the right reader who, Epic, you talked about being jazzed by Barrowlands, and it grabbing you is like, good, cool. Here, I found one of my readers. Right? But there have been some who picked it up and DNF, and that's just the nature of fiction, right? Some stuff is going to grab people, and other people are going to be left cold by it. And you have to do this for more than fame and fortune, because there's very little of either of those things for most of us. And there better be more that motivate you to do this. So,
like you've said a lot of things that as someone who plans to self-publish, and I've published a short story, but they told me what to write on, so I don't really count it as my stuff. But you said a lot of stuff that I find very encouraging. And in terms of rejection, I have no fear of it. Back in the day, I did door-to-door sales, knock on doors. Hey, you wanna change your internet to TELUS? So I got used to
you well for a
yes,
life in publishing then.
100%. So I have no fear of that. There are opinions, of course, that matter more than others. But then I've come to learn that it's all subjective at the end of the day, I'm not worried about that. And thank you for everything you've shared. You went beyond the question, and you really dug into some of the deeper things I wanted to know about. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. I tend to ramble.
No, that's good. It's a good conversation. As a self-published author, how is Amazon to work with? Even just Kindle Unlimited, how useful is that as a self-published author?
I have no complaints about Amazon. They are a wonderful.
Blink twice if you're safe.
Bezos is listening in. I'm sure.
Oh my God!
It's an enormous corporation that, in many ways, is evil and has done bad things to the world. And as someone who considers himself a progressive, there are a lot of things about their business practices, their labor practices that are appalling to me. They're the only game in town. Mm-hmm. And for those who are interested in doing indie writing and self-publishing, know right now that Kindle Unlimited, I'm sure most of the people here know what Kindle Unlimited is. You're essentially enrolling in a library of books that are available. And what happens is, if I enroll my book in KU, Kindle Unlimited, I get paid by the page read. So someone borrows the book from Amazon, and every time you flip that page, I get a fraction of a penny. And the exact amount differs from month to month, depending on how much money has been paid into the Kindle Unlimited fund for that month. But the way that I make money is through the sale of ebooks, which is just someone buying the book outright in electronic form, digital form, print copies, audiobook purchases, and Kindle Unlimited. Half of my money comes from Kindle Unlimited.
Wow.
Half of the royalties I get are just from page reads.
Wow.
And so if I wanted to go wide, which some indies do, where they're going to go to Kobo and is Nook still a thing, and whatever other platforms there are, and most of the time I see they all come crawling back to their evil Uncle Amazon. They're a monopoly, and they've got monopoly power, and part of it is because the publishing industry has been asleep at the wheel, and has in a lot of. We were just having a discussion in the Slack group that I mentioned I'm a part of, Terrible 10, about as much as we like to talk about how evil Amazon is and blame them for what's happening in publishing, a lot of this is because publishing, the traditional publishing has declined to change with the times, and to recognize that people want different things, and there are different ways for people to read, and being so hooked into this print media, which is, hey, I got bookcases galore behind me here. I love print, but that's not all there is in the world now. And
hearing you describe that makes me think back to the late 90s, early 2000s of the music industry, when they were late to the party with digital. Is that kind of the same?
I think so, probably. I mean, I'm not as business savvy as a lot of these other people that I know are, but I mean, the arguments they make sense. That a lot of these the publishing industry has become this kind of behemoth that doesn't move very fast. It's like steering a cargo ship, and I think that I think there's a good chance that brick and mortar stores they're going to go the same way as places where you used to buy records. Remember record stores? Anyone?
Yeah, Tower Records and
Tower Records and whatnot. It's gone. And Amazon, if I don't know if anyone's going to be able to successfully challenge Amazon unless there's some sort of antitrust thing that happens. But I don't think that we have any politicians who have the appetite for taking on, a company that has more income than many developed nations. So I think this is what we got. This is the playing field, and we can rail against it. And I could take a principled stance and say, no, I'm just going to go wide and not tie myself down to Amazon. And every now and again, I get an email from a reader who says, hey, I really want to read your books. Are they available in Kobo or whatever? And, I have to say that I'm sorry, it's an Amazon exclusive, because, they have my, my son in a cellar somewhere. And I have to keep selling exclusively through them. So, it is what it is.
Yeah. It's interesting to me. Everyone's different experiences with publishing and Amazon, and you would think someone would come along and try and challenge them with I know they don't have the resources right away, but just something even small just to get the business rolling. But
Hmm.
Yeah, part of the problem with that is that, you know, Amazon is savvy enough that they would find a way. I think for a lot of people who would try to start up something like that, they would find a way to eat them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's just what I was thinking. I was like, that monopoly. Like, I feel like it's so Amazon is so powerful right now. You know,
yeah,
it's so powerful. Like, and yeah, like they're really benefiting from that monopoly. So they would do anything they can to like keep it that way.
And I, for one, welcome our corporate overlords.
Yeah, but either way, like I would prefer to publish with Amazon than like traditional publishing anyway. You know, like there are some editors that act as like gatekeepers for like publishing companies, and that idea of you telling me like the worth of my story based on parameters that are set that aren't like moving with the times is very it unsettles me a lot because I've read a lot of literature, like old stuff. I've read like a lot of like recent stuff as well, and it's for anyone who reads that extensively, you can see that things are moving in a certain direction. You can kind of tell where the attention is, you know. So and I don't and like you said, they haven't moved along with the time, and that is very unsettling for me, you know. So either way, Amazon is the way to go.
Unfortunately.
yeah. And the
Yeah.
pandemics made that situation worse.
Yes,
With
amplified
Yeah.
it even more. So
So
like
something that I really appreciate about Amazon, although they keep juggling where it ends up on your page, is also reds, right? That also read section. I've discovered so
oh yeah,
many authors that way. You know, oh, you like this book? Well, people who read this book also enjoyed this.
hmm
And I'm not talking about the promoted ones where it's, you know, because that's another way that Amazon is gobbling up money is for people who are doing advertising to get their books. So their books pop up in that promoted section for George R.R. Martin and Joy Abercrombie and other big names. But those also reds are a little purer kind of picture of what else is out there, and it's cool to see stuff pop up that I don't recognize. That, oh, what's this about? And I can go and take a look at it, and that's just something that, you know, it was all word of mouth. You know, back in the day, you know, you'd go to Walden Books or Little Professors. I'm from the Detroit area, and you'd go in and you'd go through the stacks, and that's how you'd find new writers, right?
yeah,
You'd see what they had in their mass market paperback fantasy section, fantasy and science fiction section, which used to be a lot more substantial than it is
yeah.
now.
Oh yeah.
you
And
know,
so, but now we got the also reds, which is a great way to kind of explore things.
so like just very quickly um so anyone who is a content creator and like looks at their analytics, like I look at my analytics, like I'm a nerd with books, but I'm a nerd in another kind of way as well. But I look at my analytics and suggested videos, like it's like, oh, people that watched this video like also clicked on your channel, and it shows like how long they watched my videos for. And I was finding that a lot of like people that like liked Steve's stuff, like a lot of my views comes from people who watch Steve's stuff, and the next thing that popped up was my stuff, and then it just like kept going like that. So like it's there's a thing, and you know something, like I also feel like the way social media is now, I feel I feel like, okay, so the power of social media, right? Just like people, because all these social media have their algorithms and all of them, like they recognize patterns, like people who like this also like this, and like it's a way of like keeping people like locked, like keeping their attention on their services, you know. So like I feel like if the only chance of anything ever like breaking Amazon is that power of social media, you
Hmm.
know. So like you don't need like if say you had if say you had like 10 million subscribers, or say like 200 like 10 million subscribers, you don't need Amazon. Your subscribers, like you know what I mean. So like I feel like in the new generation of authors that are social media savvy, like they might be able to like dilute that power a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
how
I don't know
important
how
is
much.
yeah.
I don't know how much attention I get from social media. I mean, I have a Twitter account, but I don't really see Twitter moving my sales very much, and I've just found that it's probably just taking a lot more of my time as I scroll through the politics stuff that enrages me. And every now and again, I'll get some cool stuff. I'll get some cool history stuff or art stuff or fantasy stuff or whatever. But I think a lot of people expect to have more contact with their with content creators, right? They need opportunities like this, and I think that's exciting. I think it's and I love the idea of being able to talk with people who are interested in what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I don't have a publishing deal. I think that is the future. The gatekeepers are slowly but surely losing their power, and that's exciting in a lot of ways. It doesn't necessarily even the playing field, but it certainly has the evil powers that be will eventually figure it out and do something else to squash that. But for the time being, we're in an exciting time.
Let me ask you a question. What writers do you enjoy reading?
I think you heard me name several who I think are really great indie fantasy authors. Bryce O'Connor as another name. Tamandra Whitecastle, I think is brilliant. In fact, right here, she has brilliant covers. But this is the first in her Living Blade trilogy. I think that she is really amazing. Her more recent books, her more recent book was Queens of the Weird, and it's Viking Mom's Quest. It's awesome. It's such a good book.
Is it like is it fantasy or is it historical?
Yes.
Fantasy,
Yes.
okay. Grim dark fantasy. What type of fantasy?
It's pretty dark. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Dark stuff, but it's awesome stuff. Another, I mentioned T.L. Greylock. Her latest book, Shadows and Ivory, is the beginning of a new trilogy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that cover.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that cover.
She wrote Song of the Ash Tree trilogy, which is also a kind of Norse inspired fantasy series. Wonderful stuff. M.L. Wang's Sort of Kagan is brilliant.
Yeah. I'm about to get in on that.
Yeah,
actually.
She's wonderful. I mentioned Phil Tucker. Dirk Ashton's Paternus trilogy is a hoot. Let me just look at my stack here. J.C. Kang, Demi Harper's God of Gnomes. What a blast! A lot of fun. It's lighter stuff. It's a hilarious book, as is Zach Pike's Orconomics. Excellent book. Ben Galley's Chasing Graves.
Yeah.
So as far as fiction is concerned, most of my attention is on indie authors now. I read a ton of history. I've been a history buff since I was a kid, and right now I'm still in the middle of Agrippina by Emma Southon. I've been a Roman history buff for ages. That's what started my interest in history, and it's a wonderful modern feminist take on the mother of Nero. Good stuff.
Wow, that would actually be very interesting because I like the way the historians they paint Nero as someone that was suffering a lot from the Oedipus complex. Like he had a like apparently he was over nurtured, not nurtured or something. Like he never like grew up like and they kind of attributed to his tendencies. You know how
Go ahead. Go
no,
ahead.
I was gonna ask you like I'm also like a big fan of like philosophy and history. Like how much would you say like history like because you said you were a fan of that like influences your writing like and how and if so like how specifically?
Huge. I think it's a huge factor, and part of it is just seeing the way that history moves and how events occur, and how uh, cultures clashing, and the impact it has on people. Just the stories.
Hmm.
It's I just find it incredibly rich. I started off, with my interest primarily in late Republican, early Imperial Roman history. That expanded a little bit with all of Roman history, Tudor England, medieval Japan.
Hmm.
What else have I? Renaissance Italy
Hmm.
is something that I've really gotten fascinated with, especially the city of Florence, which is my favorite place on the planet. With the Medici and the entire
Medici,
picture of the
yeah,
Renaissance is just, oh my god, just amazing stuff.
yeah.
Just the history of the Renaissance popes, and oh man, I mean, you just don't expect tales of lust and murder at the Vatican, but yeah. So I mean, they just inspire all sorts of constructing worlds and histories. And what happens if these two cultures that never met in reality were rubbed up against one another?
Hmm.
What would it look like? And So yeah, it's just incredibly inspirational, and I think it's important that we have that a person has a better understanding of history. So not just looking at familiar with the great man theory of history, that all history is driven by great men, and how much of the story that loses. I mean, that's where what most of our attention is, and so People's History of the United States by how am I blanking? A People's History of the United States. Help me, someone in chat.
Help him.
Yeah, fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
People's History of the Vietnam War. I can't remember the author of that either.
Howard Zinn.
Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee by D. Brown.
Wow.
Stamped from the Beginning by
I'm gonna definitely play back this video, and I'm going to like write all those books down because I have just this tiny piece of paper and there's no space anymore because you're just
I've filled up my
Stamped from the Beginning by he is the author of How to Be an Anti-Racist. But it's his account of kind of the history of people of color in Western culture. Brilliant.
Is it like during like the slavery times, or is it more like a modern take?
It's going all the way back.
That's interesting.
You're looking at what the 1619 Project put together. That is, got so much controversy here in this country about critical race theory and whatnot. 1619 Project really looked at a reckoning in the United States and recognizing the role that enslaved peoples have had in the history of this country, and looking at systemic oppression and how that has impacted our culture. So I find all that stuff fascinating.
It's funny you go in that direction. So like, it's funny you go in that direction because like since I was younger, I always used to look into like colonial history. So like one of the guys that inspired me to be a writer, his name was Baba Obu. Like that's what they used to call him. And nobody knew how old this guy was, but this guy was old, old. And like say when I was like 10 years, like he was blind. And this dude would wake up in the morning and he would just be like talking about stuff that happened when he was a little boy. So when he was a little boy, like he experienced, like he had like a first-hand experience of when like the Westerners came to Africa and like they were like trying to like take over, and he would wake up in the morning, from morning till night he would just be telling stories of how like he was running in the forest and like something exploded, entered into his eyes, he's blind. And it was like straight out of a fantasy book, because his eyes were like just like completely white, and he was like just be talking about it. And yeah, like a lot of my story as well is influenced by like colonial history, and like also American like slave history. So for me it's like a very like I like that you said that like I like that you bring that out there, that history influences your writing a lot. And that even encourages me, because right now I'm on like a grim dark fantasy like spree, where I'm just like reading through books like that. And yeah, like it reminded me to like go back into it, you know.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, we didn't plan to keep you so long, so I'm sorry. We just started
Wow,
talking, and yeah, before we know it, it's an hour later.
it's an hour already.
Yeah.
Wow, like I'm really like this conversation is like this conversation has been so interesting for me. Like I've just been like taking notes, because at least
Yeah.
mental notes, and I'm going to watch this again because it's so like you said a lot of stuff that like for someone who wants to self-publish and someone who wants to be like wants to do what you did in I haven't even read King God yet, but I'm so hyped for it. You know, like yeah. So I'm really interested in I'm really interested in reading that. And if you can make it to one of the panels so that I can ask you questions afterwards,
Mm.
because you see, I try to not like be too much, because we're not talking about Barrowlands here. We're talking about Aching God. But like yes, like I would really be happy if you could come for one of those as well, so that we can really talk about it, because I would have maybe a little bit more technical questions to ask you.
Okay. Of course, the danger is that this is so built up in your heart now that
No, but
it
then
can only
you see the
disappoint.
thing. You see, no. The thing about it is, for me, that's not how it works. I can very quickly recognize. For me, I can very quickly recognize what I would like and what I would don't like very early. Except in certain situations where like the book has one tone, and then all of a sudden there's a plot twist that just like changes everything, and then you have to rethink everything. Except in those type of situations, like I can very easily tell what I would like. And for me, tone is super important. And the tone you set, like I would definitely enjoy that. The mystery you've created, like there were just some things you did so very well. Like, and I can talk about Barrowland for hours, but you did them so well. And like what I'm looking forward to be like lost in that world. And that's why when you're talking about the other, you're doing like you're planning stuff like 700 years before, and like a rival nation, like all that stuff just gets me really excited for to read Aching God. And yeah, like trust me, like I know I'd like it.
Okay.
But
Well,
that's
let me mention real quick, the audiobook versions are available. Podium Publishing are the producers. Simon Vance, brilliant narrator, narrates the entire series. First book, Aching God. Barrowlands is available as a single on Audible. Again, it's only an hour long. Aching God, Sin Eater are all available now. And then Idol's Fall is being released, I believe, on August the 17th or the 18th
Hmm.
as an audiobook, and includes at the end Final Word. So the second short story gets the Simon Vance narration treatment at the end. And I think that audiobook is nearly 20 hours long, including the short story. So yeah, so Idols, all three will be available by the middle of August, will be available on audiobook if people prefer that format.
Right in time for our group read to start.
Yeah. And you know something like concerning well, it's actually a bit off topic, but I only buy books when they have like rereadable when I feel like okay I can pick it up again and read. But I usually just get like audiobooks or ebooks because that way, because I don't know, I had a very traumatic experience where like I was moving from Ottawa to Vancouver and like I had like 200 books and I couldn't carry it, so like I had to just give them away. When I came here, I was like, okay, I have to use a different format now, like So yeah, like and yeah, like I'm looking forward to having Aching God in my collection.
Cool, very cool.
Truth there.
Right there, I know. I've been eyeing it this whole time.
Yeah. So thanks again, Mike, for coming by and chatting with us. It's been a great conversation. Looking forward to starting the trilogy in September.
Again, thanks for having me. It was blast, and I hope you guys love it.
Yeah,
I'm excited about it. So thanks everybody who came to watch, and hopefully, even if you're not going to be reading with us, you got a chance to learn more about the trilogy and more about Mike's experience and his writing. So
yeah,
thanks
and I'm just saying, if you watch my channel, we have like there's any similarity in taste between me and what I like to read and what you like to read, then like give Barrowland it's a very safe book to read. It's only like an hour audiobook and it's not you can finish it in a few hours, so like give that a read, and if you like that, you would love Aching God. Although he recommends reading Aching God first, but yeah, let's see.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thanks everybody for dropping by. Appreciate it.
Yeah.